Republican legislators in the U.S. state of Tennessee have voted to expel 2 Democrat members from the regional House of Representatives. It comes after they took part in a protest for stricter gun laws. Justin Jones and Justin Pearson were ousted, but a third Democrat, Gloria Johnson, narrowly survived the vote. Last week, hundreds of demonstrators marched to the state capitol after 6 people died in a school shooting in Nashville. One of the expelled politicians has been speaking to BBC News about what happened.
I'm actually here in my office, starting to pack up because the state legislature, the Republican majority, took the very unprecedented and extreme move to expel the 2 youngest Black lawmakers in the state of Tennessee. I represent a part of Nashville where just a week ago we had a mass shooting that killed 6 people, including 3 9-year-olds. And the first step my colleagues took was not to pass common sense gun laws, but to ban us for standing with those young people, thousands of young people who've been protesting for the past week, demanding a ban to these weapons of war on the streets of our community.
Justin, I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. Expelled means you lose your seat. So you're packing your stuff up right now. You have to leave?
I have to leave. They've shut off my ID badge already. So they shut off my access to the building. I had to get another former colleague to let me in. They shut off my email access, and so I'm no longer a legislator. That means that the 78,000 people from District 52 have no representation in the state of Tennessee. 78,000 voters. I represent the most diverse district in the state of Tennessee. I'm here in Nashville, District 52, and now they are left without a voice because of the decision of an extreme Republican supermajority, which is almost completely a white, caucus, expelling the 2 youngest Black lawmakers because we stood demanding action on gun violence.
Justin, you expected Republican lawmakers to take action. Are you surprised that they voted to expel you and your fellow lawmaker?
I think the nation and the world are surprised and should be shocked because what they said is that democracy does not matter in Tennessee. They took a very extreme step. There's only been 3 expulsions in the House in Tennessee history, all involving crimes or unethical behavior. This is the first expulsion for First Amendment activity for a breach of decorum. They said violating decorum rules. Even members who've been here, former members I've talked to, no one has ever heard of a breach of decorum rule resulting in expulsion. It's the most extreme measure because it doesn't only silence us, but it's really about silencing our district. And like I said, my district is 78,000 people who have no voice, no representation.
Right.
That's what they did.
So I want to ask you about what Republican lawmakers have said, because they have said that you broke rules of decorum and staged a mutiny. And we actually have a clip from the House caucus chair from the legislature. I want to play that for you right now.
We've called them out. The chairman of committees, the Speaker of the House have been calling them out time and time again for grabbing the mic, sucking the air out of the room, making sure no other voice is heard. And finally, when they come and act so foolish on the House floor, this is a sacred place that belongs to everybody, and literally start looking up into the gallery with a bullhorn, getting the protesters worked up into a frenzy, that is incumbent on us to say, you've gone a step too far, and we're going to take steps to make sure that if you ever do come back, if you get reelected, that it's a serious thing to Tennesseans.
Justin, did you and your fellow lawmaker take it a step too far, as we heard there?
No, we have spent the whole session being silent, not able to speak. And so what led up to this point was that whole week, again, I represent a part of Nashville, a community that is mourning, a community that is traumatized. We couldn't even talk about the issue of gun violence because this legislature was passing laws to arm teachers, to make it easier to get a gun than it is to vote or to get health care. This is a very uniquely American problem where we have these constant mass shootings at an elementary school in Nashville. And our colleagues wouldn't even let us talk about the issue of gun violence. All they let us do is offer moments of silence. But what we said is that we're tired of moments of silence. And so when we spoke on the House floor to try and speak about this, the speaker cut off our microphone. When I went out to stand with the protesters, those protesting, he shut down my voting machine so I couldn't even vote for a while. This is a very extreme reaction from a body that has spent the whole session trying to silence any voice of dissent or opposition. And if I didn't know that this happened to me, I would not think that this was America. This sounds like, this is autocracy. And it's very scary that this Republican supermajority has silenced us, has silenced our voters for standing up, not trying to call for violence, but calling for the exact opposite, the end to gun violence. We were calling for action so that we can stop our young people and our children from being murdered and massacred. That's what we were calling for from the House floor.
So you and your fellow expelled lawmaker, Justin Pearson, you are 2 young Black representatives. Your fellow Democrat, Gloria Johnson, she also took part in this protest. She was not expelled. Republican legislators are saying this is not about race. What's your response to that?
I mean, Gloria said it herself. Gloria said the only difference is our skin color, that they expelled the two youngest Black lawmakers. Their caucus of 75 members, the Republican caucus in Tennessee, has only one non-white member. And this whole session, they've made us feel unwelcome. They've talked about, that we should not, talk about systemic racism, that we cannot be our full authentic selves and represent our diverse districts. And so this is clearly racism from the Republican caucus and Speaker Cameron Sexton in particular, who really was the force and hand behind pushing this expulsion vote.
So you've now lost your seat, and your aim was to achieve some sort of progress on gun reform. What are your plans now for achieving that reform now that you're out of office?
I mean, we had thousands of young people there who are going to return on Monday. And now, whether I'm inside the chamber or outside the chamber, I'm going to stand with them and demand that my colleagues act, because what we were calling for was a ban on assault weapons, these weapons of war. And what they responded with was an assault on democracy. And that's shameful. I don't think in England, people can buy an AR-15, but here in Tennessee, they can easily buy an AR-15. It's much easier to do that than it is to vote or to get health care. And that's shameful. And this is a uniquely American problem. And as somebody who's young, this is something that's defined our generation, these school shootings from Sandy Hook to Uvalde to now here in Nashville at Covenant Elementary School. It is shameful. And we in Tennessee need to act, because we've done the opposite. They're beholden to these special interest groups like the NRA, that they won't listen to the voices of these young people and the voices of our constituents. And that's shameful.
You and your fellow expel lawmaker, Justin Pearson, what happens for you next? Do you have to run for your seats again?
So there's a process where the council can appoint, a special election. And I know my council, I was already getting messages, I think the mayor posted about it of Nashville, that they're calling a meeting Monday to try and reappoint me here. But, the question is if the Republican supermajority will seat us back here. So again, they are trying to usurp and undo the will of our voters, of my community. None of these people who voted for expulsion live in my community. They all live in different districts, and they've silenced the voices of District 52. 78,000 people in my district don't have a representative right now because of this extreme attack on democracy. We have members in the legislature who've been guilty of sexual harassment, who weren't, expelled, who've been guilty of crimes they are not expelled, but for standing with our constituents and calling for the end to these proliferation of gun laws, we've been expelled.
Are you going to pursue any legal recourse for this expulsion?
I mean, I definitely am. I've talked to council before, and we've been talking tonight, because it's unconstitutional. There was a violation of due process, and there was an undoing of our constituents' voice. There's so many constitutional concerns. That's why the nation and the world are looking at what's happening to Tennessee, because this is such an extreme measure that that's unheard of. And if it can happen to Tennessee, it's sending a signal that it can happen in other parts of America.